He said something that I want to share with you. It's just one sentence: I am nothing. Now, what he meant by that is people you see it big time, far left, far right, but these people that are on the far right, they're holding the identity of a person on the far right. A person on the far left is holding the identity of a person on the far left. What Don Xavier was implying is, I am none of those things. If I look at, okay, what identity could I hold? That identity would be that I am the ultimate power in the universe, but seek to create the identity of infinite intelligence, meaning that I'm not the identity of a black person or a white person or a Republican or a Democrat or rich or poor. I am the identity of the ultimate power in the universe. Your appearances are only your appearances because you've created them through the illusions of your identity. What that means, you can create any illusion and identity that you want. So it is titled Shaman's Tips for an Amazing 2026, Part 3. Okay, I want to address that very quickly. When I say Shaman's Tips for an Amazing 2026, what I'm meaning and what I'm intending is take these little tidbits, these little nuggets, even though they can be life-changing when you dive into them, and use them to improve yourself in some way so that 2026 is a better year for you than what 2025 was. I just wanted to clear that up. But in this episode, we're going to dig into 4 more tips, so keep listening. I just looked through some old notebooks. I pulled these out. I am not exaggerating. I literally, on my phone, have probably 1,000 recordings of conversations I've had with Don Xavier. In years gone by, I used to record things on CD, and I have literally 200 CDs and notebook after notebook. So in doing these, I just kind of scan through and see what jumps out that's really easy to share with you guys. I just jump through and I find things that I know that when you assimilate it into your life, it just makes your life a lot easier and you grow and you evolve. Okay, so the first tip I want to share with you, the first thought is this. A few months ago, I did a program called The Identity Illusion. What I showed people is you've created your current life, all your circumstances right now, as a result of your identity. But the illusionary identity, meaning the person you learn to become, literally is what sabotages you, and you need a different and higher identity. And that works really well for that level of work that I do. But here at the podcast, I want to take a little bit different direction. And I'll explain this, but what I want to share with you is when we live from an identity, and that identity could be, I am white, I am black, I am rich, I am poor, I am tall, I am clumsy, I'm good at math, I'm bad at math, whatever it might be. So when we live from that identity, we often find limitations in that identity. So what we often want to do is create another identity. Understandable. And I want to go to the most powerful identity you can hold in just a bit. But all that we're doing when we do that is here's the tidbit number 1, you're just replacing one illusion with another illusion. So let's say that you are struggling with money. Well, the illusions about the identity you had, and the illusions might be, I can't make money. People like me don't have money. Money's hard for me. No one in my family's ever been wealthy. So then let's say we become wealthy. Then what we've done is we've simply just actually replaced the old illusion with a new illusion. Now, what I want to point out, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that because that's what we do. That's how we get through life. But I want to talk about a more profound identity here in this section of the work. I was having dinner with Don Xavier. It's a family dinner, and we'll talk about anything that any family talks about, this and that, or something new going on in town, or some event, or whatever it might be. And we were talking about politics. And in that conversation, we were talking about the current state of world affairs, and Don Xavier kept taking it back to political perspectives and the bigger picture of what's happening to humanity. But when we were talking about a lot of chaos in the world, he said something that I want to share with you. It's just one sentence, but he said, I am nothing. Now, what he meant by that is people you see it big time, on, which is why I don't go on Facebook anymore, or social media. You see it big time on social media, and you see the whole spectrum here in the US, as you do around the world, of far left, far right, middle left, middle right, center of the road, moderate, etc. But these people that are on the far right, they're holding the identity of a person on the far right. A person on the far left is holding the identity of a person on the far left. And what Don Xavier was implying is, I am none of those things. Now, what he was not implying is he is to a large degree apolitical, but what he was really inferring is, I'm not getting into the traps of any of those identities. So we spend our life in the illusion of whatever identity we've learned to hold, and we learn that identity through our social conditioning. There's someone in TCP right now, and I had mentioned to her recently on a coaching call, a group call, I said, you're Jewish, because I knew that she identified as Jewish. And she's actually on her second round of TCP. Many people come and they just do one round, but a significant amount of people stay and they go through multiple rounds. And I said, but you're Jewish. And I was using that as an example, something I was trying to share with her, maybe a metaphor, whatever. I don't recall what it was, analogy, whatever. But she said something along the lines of, that's slipping away and not anymore. And that's not a negative thing. She meant that in a positive way, is that she was now and is now evolving and growing beyond the 3D illusion of her life that was given to her by her parents and the world and socialization. So, as I'd mentioned in this first part here, is what we're generally going to do, and I want to facilitate this with you, is you're going to want to replace, which is what we naturally do, one illusion with another illusion. Where I'm going to go next goes beyond that, but what I'm going to tell you is I'm going to go way beyond that. But if you don't get there, that's okay. I understand that. So just work from the awareness that whatever you think is made up in your mind. And you are creating these illusions in your mind of what you think life is and is not, and what you think your abilities are and are not, and what you think you're capable of creating and not capable of creating. It's all made up in your mind. But where I want to go beyond here is to a program that I've never been to, but I knew an instructor, a personal development program called Landmark Forum. Where they lead people is exactly where I strive to live from. And that is, when you talk about identity, they seek to create, which is what I do in TCP, and we do a little of it here, but seek to create the identity of infinite intelligence, meaning that I'm not the identity of a Black person or a white person or a Republican or a Democrat or rich or poor. I am the identity of, if you remember, I did an episode a while back on, you're the ultimate power in the universe. That is the identity that I'm talking about. Because Landmark Forum, their approach, as I understand, again, I've not been to any of their events, is to get you into the identity of the awareness of the infinite intelligence in you. And I just said the same thing, but differently, when I said you're the ultimate power in the universe, and you are, because you're part of the universe and it's all connected. And I've done several episodes on this the past year. So if you just go back through past episodes, especially the last 6 months, you'll find stuff like this. So if I look at, okay, what identity could I hold that is the most empowering identity I could hold? That identity would be that I am the ultimate power in the universe. Now, a couple of caveats here is, this is not about analytical awareness. I see a lot of this in my programs where I will, I had asked a group last week, one of my groups, before they accepted their current identity of themselves. Some people said, well, I'm, like divine light or whatever. My point is that people tend to go way out there woo-woo, and they know it analytically, but they don't know it soulfully. They don't know it at a soul level. So you listening right now might think, well, yes, however you want to articulate it. I'm a child of God, or I am, part of the quantum universe, or I am whatever, some kind of spiritual, identity you're accepting. But when I say spiritual, people that are spiritual tend to make it woo-woo a lot of times. And I understand that, but we have to ground that. So what I would request is knowing yourself as divine intelligence. You've heard me say it before. Know yourself as soul. I just want to get you to start thinking in this particular episode. Realize this truism. Even as you're listening to this, you're filtering this through your current identity. Whatever your identity is like a pair of reading glasses, and you're filtering what you're listening to through that identity. And what we need to do is sort through and cut through that clutter and get you to start holding in your consciousness. Start asking, start inviting, ask your subconscious mind, hey, subconscious mind, I know that I'm infinite intelligence. Give me more of an emotional, visceral experience. Show me what that is so that I can start understanding and I can start knowing myself at a deeper level of awareness. Because what happens is many times our analytical mind gets in the way. And again, we're like, oh, I'm the being of light. I'm the universal divine, blah, 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 but I can't pay my light bill. Well, if you truly knew you were that, you wouldn't have a problem manifesting. So for right now, we'll leave it at this for now. What you want to explore is you're the creator. You're the ultimate power in the universe. You think about that. And that's the illusion that you want to start working from, because you're going to work from an illusion. And the illusion you want to start working from is however you want to phrase it for you. I'm the creator. I'm the ultimate force. I'm the ultimate power. Whatever phraseology works for you. Okay, the next one is the toxicity of reason and rationality. As many of us have done, I did this for decades of my life. I know where I stand analytically, rationally, and academically compared to other people that might take a Wechsler or whatever the other ones. There's a couple of different kinds of IQ tests. Stanford, Binet, and the Wechsler. I know where I stand, so to speak, on the Stanford, Binet, and Wechsler. And candidly, I did pretty well. I'll leave it at that. So we tend to get into, in our culture in the West, we're taught the smarter that you are, the further you're going to get ahead in life. And I lived in that frame for many years. And I defined myself by my intelligence. It's an identity trap. Because notice what we're doing. We are in the toxicity and reasoning and rationality of what we think our intelligence is and what the value of intelligence is and how society values it, etc. The first time that I met Don Juan Matus, he said to me, "You think too much. And when you think too much, you make yourself heavy. And when you make yourself heavy, you cannot fly." Now, what did I do back in the 90s when he said that to me? I tried to rationalize what he's telling me that I shouldn't be doing. I'm thinking too much. I know many of you actually listening can relate to being an overthinker. It's not related to this podcast episode, but overthinking comes from a lot of different things, but plain and simple, the root cause is the fear of making a mistake or the fear of looking bad or the fear of being judged. So if I think and I think and I think about this, and if I get it right, people are going to say good things about me. And if they say good things about me, they're going to like me. And if they're going to like me, they're going to accept me into the tribe. I recall talking to a good friend of mine. Well, we talk often, but it was last month or so. I was talking to my good friend Gary Zukoff. I literally, because it was impactful to me. And the way that he said it, it made a lot of sense to me because we were talking about becoming and being a non-thinker, meaning we are a sensor. We sense the world through our consciousness and our higher mind, and we don't think our way through life. Now, when I say we don't think our way through life, we still have to obviously, analyze some things and think through life. But Gary said, quote, "There was a time when I realized my rationality did nothing for me. And let's talk about why you might be stuck in your life, afraid to take a job, afraid to move somewhere, afraid to leave a relationship, whatever it might be for you. And the reason why you're into all these illusions and all this thinking, this analysis in your brain. I want to talk about the brain for a second. Erroneously believe that we are either right brain or left brain. That is not true. We are whole brain, but yet hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, have different functions, but they also cross functions in thinking and thought processes or sensory processes, okay? So both hemispheres work together and they work as a team. But the right brain, it identifies emotions and experiences the emotions, whereas the left brain interprets and decides how to respond to the emotions. So the brain is working together, but both parts of the brain are doing different things, but then they come back together and they work as a whole. The reason I tell you this, and as it applies to this point, the left side of the brain is responsible for analytical function. Analyze, analyze, analyze. The right hand side of the brain is responsible for creativity and emotion and imagination. And the takeaway I want to give you here in this particular episode is that our intuition comes through our imagination, our emotion. That's where sensing and higher awareness comes through. And then our left brain thinks about it. I'll give you a great example. I mean, just like you, I'm on the planet learning my lessons. And my book that's out called The Subconscious Solution, I woke up one morning and I had a dream. And the dream, which I also own the trademark to the phrase be, do, have, meaning you've got to be more before you can do more, before you can have more. And I was going to name the book Be to Have, Be to Have Manual, something along those lines, with a really good tagline that would give meaning to the book. And then I listened to a book marketing air quote expert. And they're like, no, don't go with that title. And they said, if I was walking through the airport and I saw it, it wouldn't catch my attention, blah, 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 blah. So I listened to the expert that I paid $25,000 to. I should have went with the intuition that said, here's what you named the book, which came from Dreamtime. So what I'm sharing with you is if you stay in your head all the time, because see, if you're watching this in video, and if you're not, I'll explain what I'm doing. Most people work from, I'm putting my hand at my neck, they work from the neck up. But the intuition and the knowing and the sensing comes from the neck down into the chest, into the thymus, into the sacred heart, which is the thymus, into the heart. So when we work only from the head up, we cut the heart off. When we cut the heart off, the thymus, we cut off the sensing and the knowing and the higher awareness. And so this is what it means when Gary and I were talking about is that most people spend their entire life in the reason and rationality. They don't even recognize they're the ones through their reason and rationality that got them air quotes stuck in life, but they keep using the same tools, the reasoning and rationality that led them to a stuck place. They keep using that same reasoning and rationality to get unstuck from a place the reason and rationality took them in the first place. This is why we have to drop down into our higher awareness, our sense, and our higher mind. But this is why we have to actually just recognize that we can't analyze our way through life. Think about that. We cannot analyze our way through life. So what I want to ask you here is this. When you're thinking about doing something, moving across the country, maybe you want to move towns, maybe you want to move a job, your barometer should not first be your analytical thinking. Now, what I'm also telling you is don't do anything stupid. Use your analytical mind to make sure that you're making decisions that are in your best interest. I'll leave it at that. No time to dig into it in this particular episode. But ask yourself, how do I feel about this? And when I'm coaching people, many times I will say, okay, how do you feel about blank? Whatever it might be they're wanting coaching on. How do you feel about it? 9 times out of 10, people will say, well, I think blank. And I'll have to stop them and say, hang on. I didn't ask you what you think because, see, they're going from the neck up. I asked you, how do you feel about it? Let's drop down into those feelings. Because when we do, now we're engaging the soulful part of us and our intuition. And we have to let our intuition be our guide. I also want to point out, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, use the analytical part of the mind to make sure we're not reckless with the intuition. Because some people, literally, I've seen this, they they'll follow the intuition so fully that they will create financial challenges or whatever in their life. They're following their intuition, but they're not using the analytical part of the brain to think through the smart way to follow the intuition, or they will get into the arrogance of, oh, I'm really intuitive. I don't need you to tell me what to do. And they might not be as intuitive as what they think they are. And they're kind of going off half cocked or half loaded, so to speak. So, your point number 2 is recognize that your reasoning and your rationality from a soulful perspective, that is toxicity. Okay, so point number 3 is we are slaves to appearances. What is meant by that is we are generally, and I have been for many years of my life, we are slaves to appearances. If human beings knew how the universe worked, they would cease to believe in miracles. Notice that. If humans understood how the universe worked, they would cease to believe in miracles. But what we do instead is we focus on the appearance and we forget or don't even recognize or realize the depth of what Saint Germain said. Appearances of body and mind and circumstance. So when we look at appearances, we could look at the economy. Now, I don't know how the economy pertains to you and how it's affecting or not affecting or helping or hurting you. We're all different. And when I look at this, the majority of people, this is not an opinion, it's a fact. The majority of people struggle with money in this country. As a matter of fact, 79% of Americans are financially insecure, meaning they could be 3 paychecks away from perhaps being homeless. Right now, there's this big political, thing going on with the government shut down, and how many millions of people are on SNAP. And as I understand, that would be terminated, I think, as of tomorrow or Friday or Saturday or so. We look at the external world and the economy, or our bank account, or our body, or where we live, or our job, and then we evaluate from the appearance. We're working 100% backwards. Because, see, what appears in your life now came from you. You are the one that created it from your subconscious identity and illusions that you were living in. You created it. So then you create these appearances you don't like. Then what you do is you live within the appearances of what you created that you don't like. It doesn't work. This is why people will spend I did, honestly, that was me. I spent decades trying to get out of that myself, living from appearances. And appearances would be, and I use money because it's very tangible. But again, a doctor could tell somebody, you know what? You have XYZ going on in your body and you're sick. Now, if the person lives by an appearance, they could say, yeah, I feel that. I, okay, that's the diagnosis. But that's not where we want to live from. I had a guy named Bob Cafaro on the podcast about 3 years ago. He healed himself from multiple sclerosis. And he said, accept the diagnosis, but do not accept the prognosis. And that's pretty much summarizing what I'm saying right now. So we can accept the diagnosis of life. Shit, this is where I am. But then the prognosis for us is, well, these are my appearances. This is where I am. Okay, this is where I am. I'm stuck. There's no way out of this. It's backwards thinking. So where we have to work from is recognizing I am the creator of these appearances. I am the ultimate power in the universe. And when we work from there, now we're working from awareness. We're working from what, Saint Germain was talking about. Most of us work from only what we can experience with our five physical senses, never giving any credence or any power, and realizing that the real power is not in the physical senses, it is in the mind. And the mind can create anything, but we have to get out of the appearances. If you've listened for any amount of time, you know that I had a stroke and heart failure in 2020. Now, doctors, by appearances, I got all kinds of, prognosis of you're going to be fine to you could have all these limitations in life, blah, 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 blah. I didn't listen to any of them because that would be by appearance. Where I work from is I know that I have the ability to be 100% healthy and feeling good and great and wonderful. I know that. So that's akin to what Saint Germain said. If if people knew how the universe worked, they would cease to believe in miracles. Well, I don't know that I'm a miracle, but what I encountered is far beyond what most people encounter in a lifetime. And I encountered both in the same year, that's 6 months apart. But I didn't work from appearances. I worked from mind and knowing. And the knowing was I'm 100% certain that I am on the path to being well again very, very quickly. So here's a couple of thoughts I want to share with you is when we identify with appearances and they're not good appearances, we then identify with them and then they become our identity and reality. So you think about what appearances, and appearances again are your physical circumstances. What appearances do you identify with? And an example of that would be if you have no money in your bank account, and that is the appearance, then you identify with that and say, I am broke. And then through saying you are broke, what you do is you hold that consciousness, that energy, you attract it to you, and you perpetuate that reality of that identity of being broke. That is the trap of working from appearance. The truth, you are a luminous being of light. You are pure consciousness. And the truth is, if you want to go beyond organized religion and human dogma, if you want to know what God is consciousness. And that is the truth. Consciousness is the glue that holds the entire universe together. And as I was saying earlier, we cannot work from, ooh, okay, I analytically understand that. We have to work from coming to know ourselves. And that's why earlier I gave you the suggestion and so Don Javier and I were talking about this a couple of days ago. And actually, he wasn't talking to me. I was in the conversation, but he wasn't talking to me. It was someone else that he was talking to. And this guy was pretty gifted, but he didn't know that he was gifted at all. Don Javier said, slow down and just take 5 minutes per day and unplug from everything you're doing. No phone, email, nothing. And start training your brain to take 5 minutes and just sit in the quietness and the silence. And I think when you do that, something like that, I'm recommending to you, you'll find that you start having epiphanies coming and you'll start experiencing yourself in a different way. And when you experience yourself in a different way, now you're coming to the awareness of a higher version of you. Okay, next one is a short point. This is Don Juan. Now, as I mentioned before, Don Juan was, it's kind of like how do I say this? He's tough. As I've mentioned, he would often use the phrase hammer to a nail. And if he came after you, he came after me a lot because I tend to be a rebel. But if he comes after you, man, you're gonna get hammered. And in a channeling with him one time, he said to us there, he goes, "You don't get what you want in life because you're being ridiculous." And again, these are his words, not mine. And he used to say, people get into their ridiculousnesses. However, the word is like ridiculousness. He'd make up words. He was Spanish and he spoke Spanish. And he would say, people get into their stupidities and pendejadas, which means dumbass behaviors. And he never, ever, I've never seen him call anyone stupid or dumbass. He just doesn't do that. But he's talking about the behavior, not the person. And he would often say, people get into their stupidities. Now, what kind of stupidities do you think he's talking about? Well, these are all stupidities according to Don Juan. This is a lack of knowing. I'm not good enough. Other people are better than me. People are going to judge me. What do you mean? I can't do anything like that. I don't have that kind of money. What if they don't like me and they tell me to go away? What if I try and what if I fail? As Don Juan put it, all this self talk, and I talked about in the last episode, I believe, when the warrior stops talking to himself, even the craziest of tasks become possible. But looking at it in this episode, in this way, the way we could look at it is, and I'm not asking you to please do not actually call yourself stupid or ridiculous or any of that. Because see, in our culture, that has a very negative connotation. Because our parents, my father in particular, when we were kids, he would say things like, don't be stupid. And he meant that in a positive way to help us, but it also came off as shaming to some degree. Because then I remember as, a boy, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, if my dad said to me, don't be stupid, then I would personalize it and feel like I was bad. So that's not what I'm telling you to do, but I'm telling you to identify these things that are not creations from the infinite being an infinite part of you, but from your very limited identity illusion. Hopefully that made sense to you. But my father used to constantly say, as a child, is you got to be practical and you got to be rational. So then what we do is if we're not practical and rational by their model of reality of what practicality and rationality are, then our parents say we're being ridiculous. And then we don't want to be ridiculous because guess what? If I'm ridiculous, then I look stupid and people are going to judge me. So what your parents have done to you without recognizing it, they've trapped you in your past. Let's say that I want to, and I look at H. Ross Perot, the Texas billionaire is not on the planet anymore. When he went to IBM, his very first year at IBM, I believe in 1961 or 60, thereabouts, he literally busted, I believe, yearly sales goal in the very first month. Now, other people might say that's ridiculous that anyone could do that, but yet he did it. And that's what Don Juan meant. Is same thing Roger Bannister, 4 minute mile. No one broke on record the 4 minute mile until Roger Bannister did, and then many people went on to break the 4 minute mile. But prior to that, people would say it's ridiculous that you can break the 4 minute mile. It's not practical. It's stupid that you think you can break the 4 minute mile. And that's what Don Juan meant by do not get into the ridiculousness and the pendejadas and the stupidity of your very limited thinking. That's what he's trying to imply. But the reason you're not getting what you want in life is because you're being ridiculous. And you're ridiculous thinking, I can't have that. I can't be that. I can't do that. I can't create it. Go back to Saint Germain. When humans understood, if the humans knew how the universe worked, they would cease to believe in miracles. That's where we want to work from. Because when we work from that place, it pulls us out of our very ridiculously limited model of reality. Now, I know right now these are all analytical thoughts that I've shared with you. Kick them around, play with them. See how they fit for you. All right, so there's no transformational takeaway this week, but if we're going to cover, go back over this week again very, very quickly, what we want to look at here is number one is illusions. You're just replacing one illusion with another illusion. So definitely you want to pick an illusion that works for you and gets you and takes you to where you want to go in life. Second part was toxicity of reason and rationality. Recognize you're not going to rationalize your way out of life. We need to feel it. I don't mean getting caught in the emotions, but let our higher awareness and our higher sense come through us. Next, we are slaves to appearances. Your appearances are only your appearances because you've created them through the illusions of your identity. What that means, because you created your current illusion, your current identity, you can create any illusion and identity that you want. So choose one that works for you. Your fourth point is you don't get what you want because you're ridiculous. You're getting into your ridiculousness. And the ridiculousness is, I am not good enough. Who am I to have that? And the self-talk, people are going to say things about me. These are all what Don Juan would call stupidities or pendejadas. And again, he's not, to set the record straight, calling you stupid. He's saying in his very direct way that the behaviors are ridiculous behaviors. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed this episode. No transformational takeaway. We'll be back next week with some more tips for you. I appreciate you listening. Make it a great morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time of day it is where you are, and I'll catch you later. Take care. Bye-bye.